Learn how leaders can effectively transform institutions to get long-lasting results. Winning with Michael Mann, CEO of Alberta Innovates, on today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so you can get inspired and grow your business. Here's your host, Gordon Shepherd. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so that you can get inspired and grow your business. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. And to kick off the show, I want to talk about an important branding concept that I learned from Bill Harper, the CEO of Brand Boss HQ, on episode 46. He said that if businesses want to cut through the noise in the marketplace, then they have to choose to talk about the one thing that they are really good at. The trap for so many businesses is to say that they can do all kinds of things for all kinds of customers. But when they do that, then they actually become a commodity, just like every other business in their category. So if you want your marketing dollars to actually start working so that you can get more customers, then start by listening to Bill on episode 46. And if you want to build your leadership skills even further, then I suggest checking out all of the past episodes because you will hear highly experienced leaders sharing the roadmap for how they achieve their biggest wins. I also want to remind you that the Executive Wins Podcast won the Best New Podcast Award in the Quill Podcasting Awards in its first year of production. And thanks to you, the Executive Wins Podcast has surpassed 34,000 views on YouTube and more than 18,000 minutes of watch time, along with having over 1,400 downloads on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen. Featuring mission-driven leaders sharing their biggest wins so that you can get inspired and grow your business. That's what you get on the Executive Wins Podcast. On today's episode, you'll learn how leaders can effectively transform institutions to get long-lasting results. Winning with Michael Mann, CEO of Alberta Innovates. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our new workshop called How Leaders Can Tell Winning Stories to Get Profitable Results. This workshop helps leaders learn how to tell highly effective stories so they can inspire their teams and customers to get more profitable results. In this hands-on workshop, leaders will learn a proven 5-step storytelling system. It's called the Anatomy of a Win, so that they can actually articulate the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every winning story that they want to tell. They'll also learn how to dynamically use their voice and be confident storytellers no matter where they are, at the office, networking events, in the boardroom, or on stage. So if you and your leadership team really want to learn how to tell winning stories to get more profitable results, then get in touch with me directly at gord@executivewins.com or visit executivewins.com/Executive Wins Storytelling Workshop to learn more. And now on to today's show. We are lucky to be joined by Michael Mann, CEO of Alberta Innovates, an organization that provides funding, business advice and connections, applied research, and industrial testing facilities to accelerate research and innovations that benefit Albertans and the world. You can learn about their work at albertainnovates.ca. That's albertainnovates.ca. On this episode, you'll learn about Mike's deep experience in leading large institutions, including the University of Lethbridge, where he helped turn it into a world-class destination, while getting hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure built over a decade. You'll also learn about the importance of socializing a big idea early on as you build out a diversified stakeholder group in order to make big changes happen. This episode is must listen for anyone leading significant institutional change because it will remind you about the importance of being authentic and remembering that people are at the root of progress. I also want to remind you that this interview follows a specific format that I created called The Anatomy of a Win, to help you learn the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every business win that you hear on this show. I really do hope that you can use this approach to reach your next business milestone. And now here's Michael Mann with his executive win. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, it's just so wonderful to have you here because you are new in a leadership role, out of retirement, back in the game, doing your work at Alberta Innovates, but you've led large institutional change throughout your career, along with some hockey stuff there in the background that I'm sure we could have some fun talking about if we needed to, and then all kinds of other adventures that you've been on throughout your career. So we're very lucky to have you here today. There's a lot of people, though, that haven't met you. So if you
You
had to
bet.
describe yourself, what would you say?
Sure. Thanks. Well, as you said, I'm the CEO of Alberta Innovates. I've been in that role for 18 months or so. And prior to that, I was really involved in academic leadership in both the province of Alberta and in the province of Manitoba and nationally. I chaired Universities Canada, which is an organization of all the universities in the country. And along the way, have been involved in both research and innovation at an individual level as a researcher and faculty member, but also at an institutional level. And so, when I was asked to take on this role at Alberta Innovates, it was an interesting question. It was not a question I was actually contemplating when I was asked. And so I had to step back and think about whether or not this is something that I wanted to do. I knew so much about Alberta Innovates, having worked with it in the province for about 25 years, but hadn't anticipated leading it. The reason I said yes is because it's the mission of the organization is so important, I think, to the province, but also resonates with me. And so, in introducing myself, I would say I'm a passionate guy about innovation and research and how they can support the evolution of communities and society. And so that's what I've spent my career focused on.
How wonderful and how nice to be sort of top of game with not a lot of risk. I think it's interesting when I hear about the folks that come out of retirement. Do you know what I mean? Like you've got a real chance now, having sort of been in those rooms at those other times in our, high-end leadership careers, but now you're in a position where I think you can really sort of play out the values and the vision that you bring to combine into Alberta Innovates at this time. This is really interesting. So also I heard ecosystem-wise, you've been a researcher, you've been in the trenches, but then you've been at that institutional level,
Yeah.
cross-province, cross-institution, and also at the national level as well. So I think we're talking to the right guy, which is a good sign in terms of this type of interview, obviously, and good choice on their part to get you in with your vision. If you had to describe your biggest win throughout this journey, and there's been many, and so it's almost unfair in a sense to get you down to one, but I think the one that we talked about in the pre-interview that you might be able to identify here will be a really good story to talk through that will then help us step into some of this current stuff that you're doing as well. What would that win be?
Yeah, thanks. So I think, and you and I talked about this. I think the win that I've reflected back on as to the extent to which it really did was transformational in terms of the changes we undertook was when at the University of Lethbridge we started thinking about how best to position the university in order for it to continue to grow and evolve. And one of the things that I was struck by when, in fact, I was interviewing for the role and chatting with different folks about the University of Lethbridge was that the U of L has about 70 to 75% of its students that come from away. Only about 25% of the students come from Lethbridge and surrounding area. And as I started digging into that, one of the things that I was really struck by was that in order for the university to be successful and to grow and to be seen as vital, it needed to continue to attract students from across the province, across the country, and around the world. And so over time, we came up with, through a lot of discussions with folks, the concept of the University of Lethbridge as a destination university, as a university that was charged with creating an environment that enabled people who come from away to have a really successful and enjoyable experience, and to do so in an environment that was really designed to support the diversity of folks that came from all parts of the province, the country, and the globe. And so, this concept of destination university, we built into a framing of how we saw the university positioning itself. And so, the strategy that we came up with was called Destination 2020. It was really built around this concept of growing a university as a destination university. We undertook a process of envisioning and building a new science building, and that building, the process around designing and envisioning that building was called the Destination Project, and so we really built the notion of destination into the institution. One day, I spent some time chatting with folks about, where we were going with this and how the extent to which it resonated with them. And one of the things that I was most struck by in chatting with some folks that worked in the building and grounds department in the university was how they were thinking about the destination concept within the realm of facilities, building and grounds, cleanliness of the campus, etc. And one of them said to me, "So we really believe that our contribution to this concept of being a destination university is very much brought to life by ensuring that we have the most beautiful buildings, that our campus is attractive and inviting, that we have great food services that make people happy when they go have some lunch or breakfast or dinner, etc." And I remember stepping back and thinking to myself, man, that really says a lot about what we've been able to do in terms of creating a vision and a concept that people could come around that really helped the university to continue to evolve and grow, not just by having faculty members or deans and others buy into this and really see this as a way to sort of build the next generation of the University of Lethbridge, but to have all those that are working in the trenches in different ways come around the same concept. And so that to me was a real win because it really was something that was designed conceptually to feed into our communication strategy, to feed into our sort of our fundraising, feed into the programming that we were developing. But as it grew, it really turned into this concept that people really came around. I've been involved in lots of different strategic planning over the course of my career in all the different roles I've had. But it was this one that really resonated for me because it really did seem to find a sweet spot with people as they thought about how they could come around a concept.
There's so many things to unpack in there. Congratulations. One, that's remarkable, right? To get that type of leadership opportunity, large institution, right? In terms of what you came in there at the beginning. You're making me smile. My sister was a successful elementary school principal. And she said,
Oh,
Cord,
okay.
one of the most important people you got to talk to when you get into work, you got to make friends with the janitor. Because
Yeah.
if you don't, then you lose the whole thing. So what can we hear in this? We can hear your leadership style.
Yeah.
We're going to hear that this didn't take place in a month. You know what I mean? In terms of
No,
what you did when you walked in. We're going to hear a little bit about the timeline in just a second. There's
Yeah.
also this idea of having, like you said, having been in all your strategic planning scenarios. I've led strategic planning facilitation. You know when they're going to stick and you know when they're not going to stick. But I hear down to one word: destination. And that's remarkable. To actually get a rally cry around one word that people can kind of get into really shows off the kind of the vision and the mission that's sort of involved with there. Well, that's a ton to be proud of. And again, how lucky to have that maybe almost once in a lifetime leadership, although I know you're on to other ones too, and you'll make them even better. But that's that one where it kind of worked, but it was a big idea and it took place over a long time. If we had to jump into what I call the anatomy of a win, now that we know what the win is,
Yeah.
when we talk about the strategy, the work plan, people, operations, operations and results. And we've already highlighted that you got the strategy, this sort of vision down to, I'm going to say a word is simplistically, and
Yeah.
it crossed through all areas of the business and allowed the fundraisers to go to work, allowed the faculty to go to work, allowed the groundspeople to go to work in a sense. Any other strategic highlights that you like to point out in this win that when you sort of reflect on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I was really pleased about was the extent to which the concept went beyond the walls of the University of Lethbridge. And so when I mentioned that we were building this, or actually in the early days, we were seeking funding to build a new science building. The university's science labs were circa early 1970s. Think of the worst science labs you ever had in a high school, and they were about that. And so we're U of L is a great science university. In fact, one of the best science universities of primarily undergraduate universities in the country, ranked yearly in that manner. So we were achieving in spite of. And so as we were trying to bring resources to this project, and in particular sell the provincial government around this as a need, we decided it was really important to bring the community into the equation. And so we started having a series of conversations with mayor and council in Lethbridge, with the school board. You know, your wife's point about how important teachers are and education is, with the business community, et cetera. And we brought them together to talk about this concept of a destination project as a way to continue to build this destination university, but in particular, for them to see how this would be an enabler for the broader community, for the city of Lethbridge, for the county of Lethbridge, for the school board, et cetera, for the business communities. And so this was, something that we hadn't done before. I mean, we'd had many community consultations, but not where we really asked the community to be part of this exercise with us. And so we had the premier down one day, we as in the community, talking about how important Lethbridge was, et cetera, as Edmonton does, Lethbridge does, Grand Prairie does. And so each of us, the mayor, many others, had a chance to speak for 3 or 4 minutes to the premier. And when the mayor spoke, one of the things he said to the premier was, the number one capital project for the city of Lethbridge is the destination project at the University of Lethbridge. And, one of the things I've said to people about that for the many years since is that if you can get a mayor to declare the number one capital project for the city to be a non-city capital project, but to be a capital project of a university or whatever else, then you've accomplished something in terms of helping people to rally around, a theme, a concept, a vision. And when the mayor said that day, I thought to myself, okay, we've done it. Now, we still didn't have the money. We did eventually get $260 million from the province, which was the largest capital project in the history of the university. But that day said to me, we have achieved something as a university and as a collective that is as important to the community as it is to the university. And that is, an achievement for certain.
Congratulations. I mean, what an exciting thing to do. And thank you for having spent time. I've done bricks and mortar studying as a student, Queen's
Yeah,
University and the University of Alberta. The
yeah,
bricks and mortar islands, you're saying, no, no, no. We went way beyond that. We broke the walls down. We got out into the community. We made it a collective. And that was the way big things were going to get done. And a $260 million investment is obviously a testament
yeah.
to that very, very thing. And there's so many nuances to this to actually get that to occur, relationship building, bridge building, all the different things you had to do over time to make things occur. Wow. How neat to hear about the strategic highlights. And I'm sure we could dig in further if we had to. Because again, when you're making those fundraiser jobs easier based on a clear vision that you can go out and communicate, when you're getting these local, that's just a wonderful thing. Anytime we have a strategy, we need a work plan. So there's sort of a timeline. There's sort of a moment when it's not a destination, right? There's a moment at beginning, it's a concept.
Yeah.
What was the sort of time from concept to what you would say when that was full destination was implemented and achieved? Did it take a month, a year, a day? How long did that take?
Yeah, so I arrived in 2010 and started the process. And I would say it took a couple of years for us to really start to come around this concept in a way that was, starting to be fulsome. I started talking about the concept as soon as I arrived on campus with folks because I was convinced that it was something that could be quite meaningful and so, but I started doing it through conversation mode around the coffee tables and around, meeting rooms and chats with folks to really sort of socialize whether what I was thinking had any resonance with folks. And, then as that started to become clear as, something that seemed to resonate, we started to build on the concept into a strategic planning exercise. And excuse me, the strategic planning exercise was, in the end, about a 3-year exercise from start to finish for sure.
Interesting. And I love where you're going with that. Thank you for the word socialize. There's a lot of leaders that listen to this show. And this idea of instead of that strat planning day and then we walk out in the world and it's all perfect, you've
Yeah,
actually taken sort of a more of an entrepreneurial approach to that to say, wait a second, let me test this in what, 1,000 coffee conversations,
yeah,
right? Those hallway meetings, little moments as you're getting feedback, you're getting language feedback that you would have made a massage that with, but you came in, you had the concept, and then you're able to socialize this and
yeah.
make it kind of go forward. And that we start in 2010. Would you say project completion, or it's all kind of it reached its peak? How many years after 2010 did it take?
Well, I mean, the concept started to become more real in terms of a strategy by about 2013. Destination Project didn't start to be built till 2017.
Yep.
And so the start to finish that one project, which was not the only part of
Sure.
Destination, but symbolically, that was a 10-year exercise.
I
For
can't tell you how often I hear 10 years on this podcast from a leadership perspective. It doesn't matter if people are building, delivering safety software. 10,
yeah,
20 years, 10 years to get new inventions into market. Isn't that interesting around 10 years to make big things happen? When we talk about these hundreds of millions, when we talk about destination, when we talk about the legacy impact, boy, that'd
yeah,
be really fun. Now we're in 2025. So we could go back and measure the legacy impact of getting those infrastructure things built along with the mood that was created over that time, because that would linger for a long time as well in terms of carryover and what you've done. So we've heard of highlights from the strategy. We've got a feel
yeah,
for the work plan and some of what it takes. Thank you for socialize. Again, I'm just going to pick on that for a second because I
yeah,
think it's just really unique. Because the third step in the anatomy of a win is to talk about people. And you're a
yeah,
key driver in this. And I know there's others and probably hundreds of others in a sense.
yeah,
But let's
there
just
are.
start with you for a second in terms of naming a bit of this stakeholder group and talk about you at the beginning with your attitude. And how
Yeah.
did your attitude evolve? Was it just all easy sailing? Was it peaks and valleys? How would you describe that approach?
Yeah, no, we used a lot of different approaches. I mean, I will say the very first conversation I had around this was with Premier Ed Stelmach. And so he came to open a building that I had nothing to do with raising the money for. The previous president had. It was in the very first fall of my first year as president. So it would be September 2010. And Premier Stelmach came down to open the building. And we had dinner with him after, a group of folks. I was sitting beside him and I started socializing this with them. And so, as I've thought over the years about this using different metrics, the number of premiers I spoke to about this, the number of ministers, deputy ministers, mayors, council members, MLAs, MPs, et cetera, et cetera. I've actually never gone back and counted them all, but I could because it's all public information. But on just the public sort of government, both municipal, provincial, federal side, it was a very significant group of individuals that
Oh,
we,
absolutely. And again, we just thank you by titles because we could have those individual moments. Plus, there's something about your own secret sauce. It's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing to have the ability to communicate in those
Yes.
conversations, to make a connection. Because this thing about how things get done around here, right? That's that. There's a secret. There's a, not a secret. It's a unique aspect of pulling all that together and then cajoling with a long horizon. This thing,
Yeah.
you somewhere in there, there's a patience on your part to go, well, you know what I think, like,
Yeah.
what was it about that you could allow, like, if something's not happening in a year, do you think you're failing kind of thing? Or did you know that it was going to take a long, like, what
Yeah.
was your sort of inner sense?
I think the fact that we continued to be able to have conversations with people, that they were willing to have the conversations, the fact that nobody at any given point in time around any of these things, not just that project, but many of the things, nobody said no or that's a terrible idea. So the reinforcement pattern, I would say, of being able to continue to have authentic conversations with folks and to have those people seem interested and willing to continue the conversation enabled us to continue, on the
Well,
journey.
and a big part of this, like, big part of this is timing. Do you know what I mean? If I'm 2014 and I'm a barrel of oil, I know what I feel like, at the beginning of the year and at the end of the
Absolutely.
year. If I'm right, like, what's the
Yeah.
economy doing? And this long horizon of the internal patience. Because again, I'm just going to go back and say some of those nights the conversations didn't go well. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's
Oh,
some,
yeah.
if we
Absolutely.
track that, we would find that out too. But what are we finding out here? What is the leadership persistence that it takes to get $260 million things done, to get whole universities following along with one idea? This is really what we're getting the advantage of with this win. And again, key players, we heard the mayor in there at one point makes a declaration. That was a great moment that you described earlier as another key player. I don't mean to limit this. But if I had 4 hours to talk to you, I'd talk to you about everybody in the
Yeah.
stakeholder group.
Yeah.
But is there any one or two others that we might be missing that we need to mention for this, or can we kind of move on to that next step?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other group that was really important were the broader community members. So one of the things that we did in creating this concept and really building on this concept was to make sure that we also not only were we talking to the mayor and to the MLAs and to the MPs, et cetera, but we were constantly engaging with our alumni, with the broader community, with the universities have something called a Senate with our senators, and all of those folks who, come from all sorts of walks of life, have the ability to be influential in so many different ways, right? In talking to their neighbor about, this idea, in talking to their dentist and their doctor about these things, in bringing it to life, in chatting it with even their kids and their grandkids, and so we really took a whole of community approach to how we built this concept of Destination University and then all of the related pieces of it. And that exercise was really intentional. One of the things I did in the first 3 or 4 years was I went out to all of the high schools in Southern Alberta and spoke to them about not just about the university, but about the whole concept of having a post-secondary education experience. Part of what I was wanting to do was to um, communicate that to young people because I believe it, but also to have young people see the University of Lethbridge as a place that they would come to that believed in them and that really saw them as humans that have value. And so that high school exercise, it was actually documented by a CTV reporter in Lethbridge, and she did a series on me doing this across the course of, I think, a couple of years we did it. And she did she did a final video of the whole thing that she produced.
Well, and
But
I love it because we can hear then again, what does it take? And again, we haven't even dug into the leadership team that it would have taken. Do you know what I mean? All those folks supporting you at that senior leadership level, but we've heard so many good things. Again, what does it take to do big things? This is what it takes. Give me 10 years. Give me the chance to go and do my experiments in those early years. And doesn't this just sound like a startup at a much larger scale in terms of
Yes.
what we're talking about here? So we've got strategy, work plan, people, all
Yeah.
kinds of things to talk about in there. The next step in the anatomy of when to explore is operationally. There's some moments in here where I don't mean to dig into all of it, but I'm going to say you had to get some marketing materials together.
Yeah.
There's a logo in there somewhere to communicate the story. There's
Yeah.
communications. There's other aspects around maybe prepping up on the regulatory side of things. But any highlights on the operational side that you can point out one or two of them to get this win?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of the pieces was you mentioned senior leaders, and one of the key pieces was to get our senior leadership team, first of all, to buy into this as a concept, but then secondly, within each of their portfolios, to think about how we could bring to life this concept. The vice president research, how does destination relate to the research enterprise of the university? Our finance and administration person, how does her portfolio of HR and finance and facilities, how do they think about tying into this destination concept? Our provost, with provost of the universities, like the chief operating officer, how did he bring to life this destination concept? One of the things he did, interestingly, as an aside, is they identified through postal codes where all of our alumni and students were in Alberta. And then they developed a very focused strategy on those postal codes that were unique to the sort of context of that part of Alberta. And so, how you communicated to the students and alumni that came from the Grand Prairie region versus those students that came from Calgary, which is the largest group of students that attend the University of Lethbridge, to how students from outside of Alberta, southern BC is a big student draw area, and so this postal code exercise, and then communication strategy specific to that geographical region was a very granular approach to how do you bring destination to life, right? And so because we of course knew that, why do students come from, and they do, from Northwest Territories and the Yukon and Northern Alberta? Why do they come through Alberta, bypass the U of A, bypass MacEwan, bypass U of C, et cetera, and come all the way to Southern Alberta? What is it about that? Well, what we learned is, number one, they wanted a smaller community. That's where they wanted to live, in a smaller community. They wanted a smaller university. They wanted a university that seemed to understand who they were as a Northern Albertan or Northwest Territories citizen. And so the granularity of the approach, number one, was very successful in terms of student recruitment, but it was also very brilliant. And so Andy Haken, who was the provost at the time, is now the president of St. Francis Xavier University in Nova Scotia, and doing a remarkable job in that role. And it was
That is absolutely so insightful in terms of that postal code thing alone. Like what's nice is you're giving me a full playbook here for the next
yeah,
university that I want to bring to life, in a sense, by telling me those things. And that's a very unique description of someone with a talent and, again, a vision in his own right, to be able to have that ability to say, well, okay, this is my marching orders. Okay, great. Now I'm going to apply it in my unique way. So isn't that another sort of people moment and operational component that really brought this
yeah,
alive? Wow, there's so many good nuanced stories in this. Strategy, work plan, people, operations. Finally, there's results.
yes,
Quantitative and qualitative results. Quantitatively, I'll just
yeah.
say what I've heard so far. $260 million building. Other things that occurred in terms of there would have been municipal benefits to this as the destination. Was there an increase in student enrollment and those types of,
Yeah.
like, what,
So
tell me quantitatively what happened.
Yeah, so I mean, the key metrics that we can point to, number one, are student recruitment, and so our student population grew dramatically over the period of the time that we're talking about, both in terms of student numbers, but also the diversity of students in terms of where they came from. So the diversity of international students, for example, became that much more robust, and so student numbers, number one. Research funding, the university was named the Research University of the Year in the, I'm going to forget about the year, but during that period of time by what's called Research Info Source. And so the robustness of the research program grew substantially during that time. The fundraising was tremendously successful. So we, in the end, raised over $100 million as part of a capital campaign that was rooted in this concept of the destination, and that's not at all the 260 million. That's public dollars. So the 100 million plus that we raised was all private dollars, individual citizens, foundations, etc. And it was very, as I said, it was rooted in this destination concept. So fundraised dollars saw the largest capital campaign prior to this one was $35 million. So we absolutely knocked it out of the park in terms of fundraising. And I would say then the last one was reputationally. So we there's something called the Maclean's rankings. And so the university over that time rose to, we never did hit number one, but we rose to number two in the country, and it's have ever since maintained somewhere between that and number five in the country for the primarily undergraduate universities, of which there was like about 35 of them. And so the sort of reputational metric was a really important one for us, because it really did show that at a countrywide level, the university was now officially on the map in terms of being seen as one of Canada's great universities.
Isn't that an Alberta story? To go punch
Yeah.
above your weight? Do you know what I mean? That's not the might of, our sort of known institutions. That's like University of Lethbridge, like you said, with all its sort of what it was up against in a sense. So what a proud 10-year stretch. Gosh, how does that all come together on the qualitative side? How does it feel to talk about this win?
Yeah, I mean, it feels great. And, you said it briefly earlier, and I just want to underscore, of course, none of this happens without an amazing group of people that you work with, right? From my board and many board chairs that I had over that time and board members to my senior leadership team, to all of the folks that were working at the university over the course of that period of time. And so, what feels good to me is that we, together built something that really people were very excited about and felt good about, and that we're proud of. And so, whereas, yeah, I'm very proud of the things that we accomplished. I'm as happy for the fact that others are proud of what we accomplished in relation to what their contribution was to that vision.
How lucky, again, to have one of these moments where you and the leadership team get to steward this moment in time. You pull together all these different things. You create a destination. On the quantitative side, there's hundreds of millions in. There might be billions out. Do you know? And in terms of the
Oh,
overall
absolutely. Well, to
the
be honest,
overall the overall impact of everything, I think it's just an amazing story when you talk about building, say that area, but building Alberta, building Canada, getting those rankings to go up and punching above your weight. There's so many good things in there that happen. I need to now just dovetail. We're so
yeah,
lucky to learn about this one win in your career and how that sort of took place over that 10-year period, because now
yeah,
you're in a new chapter.
yeah,
You're like a new bride or whatever going into
yeah.
your work, and you're actually getting started again. Do we see sort of some carryover in a sense to what you're bringing to this now? And what sort of, just briefly, highlights do you want to pull us into as you sort of set up this next
Sure.
chapter in your life and then this next chapter of Alberta Innovates?
So one of the things that when I came into Alberta Innovates, one of the things that I did bring was this belief that the starting point for me as a leader had to be a series of conversations. And so one of the things we had done when I was president, or brand new president of the University of Lethbridge, or we did something called Meet Mike. And we gave everybody a chance internally and externally to meet me, and to do it in whatever version they wanted. The one of the greatest ones was with the cleaning staff. I met them at 6:30 in the morning and cleaned classrooms with them, for example. So I was telling the U of L folks about this, and they said to me, "Could we do that? Like, that sounds like a cool thing to do." So we did that. We did that over the course of 6 months. I met with every individual in the corporation, 560 of us, in different ways, again, using whatever version of that approach they wanted to. And that really gave me a chance to learn about the organization and to get granular around where where the opportunities are, where are some of the pinch points that we really, should be thinking about, and then to go beyond and do that in the community. And so I really spend a very significant amount of time in conversations with the community. That allowed us then to feed into a program review and a strategic plan that's now completed and being brought to life. But the roots of it were very similar to the roots of the exercise at the U of L. The roots are in people. It was about listening to people, hearing what they thought about when they thought about innovation, and when they think about what role Alberta Innovates should play in the innovation ecosystem, and to listen carefully enough that we could bring some of their ideas to life. And so I think one of the things that I'm very focused on, but happy about, that I think we're starting to see some gains in, is that part of what the next version of Alberta Innovates is a vision around collaboration and partnerships, and it's about how we bring the next sort of iteration of innovation supports through Alberta Innovates to the fore in collaboration. And so that piece is also very sort of similar to some of what we did at the U of L, because our belief, back to the example of the mayor, was that if we could get others to come around some key concepts and work together on these things, that we could see success. And that's what I hope we'll see in sort of the bringing out of the sort of package of the vision and strategy into action.
Well, if I'm betting on a horse, I'm betting on you and the gang you're going to lead now. I'm sure with a new leadership team, that if we got into sort of a longer conversation, we would hear all the good stuff that's been happening in these first 18 months of your sort of tenure there. What an interesting time for you to kind of bring forward. I'm really curious, in your vision, what happens in your role? And not, sorry, it's not just you, but what I mean to say, what happens now with this version of Alberta Innovates going forward? What happens if you get it right?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think if we get it right, it will result in an even more expansive set of opportunities for people in the province who are the backbone of innovation and research, entrepreneurship. It will give them an even bigger leg up to be successful, and therefore to contribute to the quality of life of the province, the prosperity of the province. So I like to think that our vision is an enabler to help support the bigger picture of success in the province, not because we will be the deliverers of that, but because we will be one of the catalysts to support that. And so, what I hope to see in the years to come is that through our funding, through our engagement, that we are able to be a catalyst for growth of innovation and entrepreneurship in this province, not just through Alberta Innovates, but through all the different partners that we have in the province, and frankly beyond the province.
I feel like I'm getting caught at a dinner table if I was Mr. Stelmach right now and you were sitting beside me. I can hear you warming, I can hear you socializing me right up to
Yeah.
sort of work your secret magic along the way. I always like to ask, give me one or two sentences if you had another leader at sort of your level in a sense and they were coming into their role, one or two sentences that you like to leave behind as sort of a leadership recommendation that you would have to maybe pass a bit of wisdom along at least.
Sure. Number one is to be authentic, to ensure that, how you practice your leadership craft is authentic to who you are, and ties into you as a person, to your experiences, to the things that you bring to the table. Because to do anything else, number one, won't be as enjoyable, I would argue, to try and be the leader that you're not. But number two, I think authentic leaders tend to be the most successful leaders. Number one. Secondly, I would say leadership is hard work, and never underestimate the number of hours it will take to be successful in a leadership endeavor. And when those hours seem to be hitting you hard, my third piece of advice is to find balance in your lives, because good leaders are not working 100% of the time. They're finding a way to have the kind of balance that allows them to display that balance to others, so that people don't see them as being so fixated on the work, but they have a bigger understanding of the world around them. And secondly, I think leaders that have balance are more enjoyable to work with. They just they're a bit more fun to have conversations with, because they're not just talking about what's happening at work. They're talking about the amazing Oilers game that happened last night. They're talking about these sorts of things at the same time.
Well, what a nice time for you coming out of retirement to get back in the game, to get another big project to go forward. How exciting to catch you at this moment in time. Thank you so much for sharing your win, and thank you so much for being on the show.
You bet. Well, thank you. It was lots of fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Socialize your big ideas early on. Be authentic, and always remember that people are at the root of progress. That is how Mike Mahon and his team win every day. Thanks, Mike, for your inspiring win. Now, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our upcoming episodes, which include how to build an innovative water treatment solutions company that is also a leader in environmental sustainability, winning with Jerry Hanna, CEO of Clearflow Group. And if you're a leader who really wants to learn how the Executive Wins coaching session can help you to grow your confidence and inspire your team, then visit executivewins.com to learn how. You can also subscribe to the Executive Wins newsletter to stay up to date on the podcast, live events, education opportunities, and more. Visit executivewins.com/newsletter to sign up. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you to grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.